Okay, class. So let us begin. We would be talking from the very basic approach, from like the cell structures and function, and then ultimately we people are gonna be discussing about the complex topics that we have to crack in your course of IGCSE Biology. And here you people should remember the code at 0610. And I hope at this point you all would know that you have your paper 2, 4, and 6. 2 would be the MCQ, 4 would be the theory paper, and 6 would be alternative to the practicals. Like you people are not required to be doing any practical, although there is a choice in IGCSEs, but you are given a practical based exam that you people have to crack for this paper 6. So here you see, you people all know already that since we people are looking on to our subject biology, then we must know that what this subject actually is deals with. So you see, whenever we people would be studying about the living organism, so this is our subject that we have to talk about. So the situation here would be that not only we people would be studying about the living organism, but at the same time, what you people have to keep it in your mind is that okay, fine, if I have got with me some living organism, so that living organism by some mean or the other is also dependent on the external environment that we have. And if I talk about the external environment, so you see that we need oxygen gas, we need the nutrients, and a lot of interaction would be going on in between the living organism and their external environment. And we will try to see that how come the living organism, this is related to the external environment. So, since I have said that we people are supposed to be studying the living organism, so if we just try to be looking on toward our environment, so here are two things that we have to be seeing, like where you people would be sitting. So we have the living organisms, and then at the same time there would be non-living organisms as well. Like for instance, you would call yourself a living organism if there are bacteria, or if there are plants, or if there are funguses, or the stuff like that. So that would be living. But the fan in your room, or the watch that you people would be wearing, or the tablet or the phone that you might be people would be using, or the laptop that you have got, so all of them, these that would be referred to as the non-living organisms. So here we have to be very much clear in understanding that okay, fine, if there is something I'm calling it as a living organism, then what is the criteria for that? So the thing is very simple, that the living organisms, they actually need to be possessing some basic characteristics in them. And if those basic characteristics that are available in some particular organism, then we people would be calling it as a living organism. If they would not be available, then ultimately it would not be referred to as a living organism. So let us begin from the very basic thing, or the characteristics which the living organisms they need to have. And this is what we call this as a nutrition. And nutrition simply means that either you people have to be obtaining the food, and if we look on toward the plant, so they make their own food. So the nutrition aspect would all be whether you are consuming the food or whether you are making your own food. And then here comes the second characteristics that we have got in the living organism, and that would be the respiration. And this is simply a kind of a chemical reaction, and in that chemical reaction, what we people actually see is that there would be the food that you people eat, and the air has oxygen gas. So this oxygen gas that we have in the air and the food that you people are eating, so they both would be reacting with one another, and that is why we people are releasing the energy out of it, and that energy would be utilized for the survival for all the activities that the living organism have to do. Like, like if I provide you with sufficient of the food, and if I take all the oxygen out, so you people would not be able to survive. And if I provide you with the surplus of the air, and I don't provide you people with the food, then ultimately you people would not live, because these two things, the food and the air, they are mandatory for the releasing of the energy. Now, there comes another thing among the basic characteristics of the living organism, and this is what we refer to this as the sensitivity. Like when we are there in our external environment, so in the external environment, the changes intend to happen. Like you were there in a car, you were driving it, or you were sitting at the back seat and some fast moving car came right in front of you. So what you people are gonna be doing is that you are people are gonna be detecting it, and then you are gonna react to it. You're gonna respond to it. So whatsoever the change that we people come across in our environment, so this would be referred to as a stimulus. So it can't only be a car moving right in front of you. This could be the playground where you would be playing and some fellow of yours would be throwing a ball onto you. So you people would detect it and then you would respond it by protecting your eyes with the help of your hands. So this ability of the living organism where they would be detecting a change in the environment and where they are going to be responding to that change. So this is what we call this as the sensitivity or the adaptability. And again, among the other features that we are discussing at the moment to be calling something as a living, so we can never forget about the growth. Okay, like what growth is, like if we talk about the origin of the human beings, so they would have the sperm coming from the male father and egg from the female parent, and then they both would be fusing, they would be making the zygote out of it, and the zygote would be undergoing multiple mitotic divisions. We would see what mitotic divisions are, and here we are making the embryo out of it. And this embryo would be converted into the fetus would be born, and then ultimately it would become a child and the men and the old men. So there is no going back. Like the fetus cannot revert back to the embryo. The embryo cannot revert back to the zygote, and alternatively, we cannot even go back to from where we actually originated. So this here we see that there is a permanent increase in the size of an organism. Why I am saying permanent? Because we can't revert back what we were initially and now what we have become at the moment. So there is no going back. And what we see another thing is that this permanent increase in the size of the organism that we people are referring to this as growth. So here the number of the cells would be increasing and their size would be increasing. Now simply this permanent increase in the size of an organism is something we refer to this as the growth we say. So this again is one of the very kind of an important characteristics of the living organism. And we can never forget about the movement, like the living organisms, and they have an ability to be changing their position. Like if I was here at point A, then I can move to point B. So now here the thing would click in our mind that, okay, fine, if we have an ability to be changing our position by going from the point A to point B, then how come the plants that we have, so they are also living. So you see that the plants they actually can't change their position, but they have got some other strategy where they would be moving with respect to be showing growth toward a stimulus, and that again would be coming higher in this course in terms of the gravitropism and in terms of the phototropism. And then there comes this excretion. So you see, guys, that whenever there was a room, and in that room, if you people were doing some work, so you people are gonna be creating a lot of mess. Okay. So why we people are living? The reason is very simple. That in our body there happens multiple chemical reaction, and as far as those chemical reactions they are being produced in our body, so we people are living. So whenever some chemical reaction would happen, so there would be production of a lot of waste materials, and whenever you try to be removing these waste materials out of your body, so this would be excretion. And then there comes this reproduction thing, as I have already told you, that if I just continue from here where I sat, that we have formed this fetus and this is born, and he would be growing, and then at one point we human beings we're gonna die. So if during our life if we are not making the organisms of our own kind, then ultimately that species would become extinct. So this is something we don't want. So simply whenever we have the living organisms and they're gonna be making the new organism of their own kind. So this is what we refer to this as reproduction, we say. So if the living organisms, they have all of these basic features or the characteristics in them, the nutrition, the respiration, the sensitivity, the growth, and onwards the movement and excretion and the reproduction in them. So that particular thing would be living. If any of a thing does not possess any of these, so ultimately that would be not a living organism.